Hey everybody, welcome to another segment of the Top 25 Stories of 2010 here with Greg Lawless. I'm Nick Forshaw. And Greg, today we're going to start at number 19. Some drama with DC United this year. Curt Onalfo on his way out, Ben Olsen on his way in.
Yeah, Curt Onalfo coming in his very first year in DC after basically being let go by Kansas City at the end of 2009. And he comes in, doesn't do well. DC struggles right from the start, and he's gone pretty much by mid-season. Ben Olsen named interim coach, and what makes this story so amazing, Nick, is that the brass at DC United coming out saying it is inconceivable that Ben Olsen will be our head coach in 2011. Well, the inconceivable has happened. Ben Olsen in the offseason named head coach of DC United, and he's already started to put his stamp on this team. First thing he does, he goes and gets Dax McCarty on the expansion draft day, and then he makes a couple of moves in re-entry draft, picking up Joseph Nguyen and Josh Wolf, a guy he knows from the national team. So he's starting to make this team a little bit like him.
Well, moving on to number 18, every year we see a handful of veterans retire, but this year's crop, something special. Brian McBride retires from Chicago, and Taylor Twellman's days are done in New England.
Obviously some big names, big attackers, in fact, and it's a shame to see both of them go. Brian McBride, of course, a legend with the U.S. national team, but also Taylor Twellman, finally those concussion problems, just basically knocking him out, if you will, from the league. And you think about what Taylor Twellman might have been able to do if he'd been healthy the whole time and how many goals he would have scored. I think he probably would have been at the top of the scoring chart. But Nick, that's not the only guys that are gone, right? A couple other guys. Clint Mathis comes to mind. He retired. John Wolyniec also gone. Mike Petke, longtime New York icon, basically. A couple of other big names, too.
And obviously some other big names out there. Chris Klein, Eddie Lewis, and C.J. Brown also on their way out of MLS. On to number 17, some more drama this time in Toronto. Preki let go and Mo Johnston up at Toronto FC.
Yeah, on September 10th is when it happened, and at the time Toronto were in third place in the East, 7-10-7, but they were on a 1-6-3 stretch at that time. And actually MLSE, the owner and operators of Toronto FC, coming out and saying, you know what, we had the wrong two guys the whole time. So making a big change, and Preki on the way out. Mo Johnston, who had been with them since the beginning, also gone. Nick Dasovic named as interim coach, and he took them through to the end. They didn't make the playoffs again, and it's still a question about what's going to happen in 2011 for them.
Well, from some big changes in Toronto to some big changes in Seattle. At number 16, it's the trade and the fallout of Freddie Ljungberg, the first DP in Seattle Sounders history, now with Chicago Fire.
Well, think about what an icon Freddie Ljungberg was for Seattle in that first year especially. He was the hero to all those Sounders fans out there. And then in the second year, it all sort of fell apart. A little bit of clashing with the club, and finally, it also happened that they get rid of him. On July 30th, the trade is made. He sent him to Chicago. It's only a conditional draft pick that goes the other way from Chicago to Seattle. And what's amazing, you think about what Seattle did after that. 9-1-2 after that in the league after they got rid of Ljungberg.
Well, moving on to number 15, perhaps the biggest club in the world was certainly on MLS soil this year. Manchester United on a domestic tour of the United States. They played the All-Star game and a handful of other games. A big moment for MLS.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch them as they toured around, and of course to see them going up against MLS competition. We've seen them come over in the past, but they end up taking on a team like Barcelona or AC Milan or something like that. This time they actually came and played some MLS teams. In Philadelphia, the Union put in a great performance and almost got a result against them. And then in Kansas City, the KC team comes out and they get a win against Manchester United. Now, by the time it got around to the All-Star game, sold out Reliance Stadium in Houston, and Manchester United put on somewhat of a clinic a little bit, and they ended up with a 5-2 victory actually over the MLS All-Stars.
Well, moving on to number 14, we'll wrap up the segment with Real Salt Lake, arguably the best home team in the league right now. Their home unbeaten streak extends to 25 games in league play and 30 over the postseason and CCL play.
Yeah, pretty amazing to think what they've done there at Rio Tinto Stadium. Ever since they've opened it, there's been great excitement in Utah for this, both the club and the team and the stadium itself, and they've made it a fortress, if you will. They know how to get results here. That's the amazing thing. Some people talk about it maybe being altitude playing into it. That's probably a little bit. However, Sandy, not quite as high as everybody thinks. I really think this really just comes down to talent and skill of the Real Salt Lake team and that desire to make sure they always get a result at home.
Well, certainly a very, very good team and a very tough place to play. There's numbers 19 through 14 on our top 25 stories of 2010. Stay tuned to MLSsoccer.com as the countdown continues.